Hello everyone, I hope you're doing very well. I'm back here today to review the Premier League game week number 3, and boy, some amazing matches in this game week. So if you enjoyed this video, please like, comment and subscribe, and let's get straight into it. So starting off with Saturday's early kickoff, Spurs 1, Wolves 0 in a game that was relatively frustrating for Spurs for a long time. In the first half, they weren't particularly great, they weren't at the races. I'd say Wolves were the better team, but then in the second half, Spurs eventually created a few more chances, and the goal came through Harry Kane scoring his 250th goal for Spurs. A significant landmark for him. But then after the game, Antonio Conte said Kane would trade that achievement for trophies, which it's hard to argue against that, to be fair. Having said that though, I'd say overall Spurs were the better team. They probably edged it, maybe just because they were more clinical, because in the first half, when Spurs didn't really create that many chances, Wolves actually were the better team, and they did create a couple of good half chances, and I think it's just the same story with Wolves. If they had a proper centre-forward playing, they probably would have buried them. Now, I said at the start of the season that they needed a new centre-forward. That's no discredit to Raul Jimenez, because for him to come back from his horrific injury, head injury, to even be playing professional football, even play like at Wolves level, let alone like professional football, and at the level that Wolves are at, a good Premier League team. That's an amazing effort for Raul Jimenez, and he's still had great moments for Wolves since his injury. The standout in my mind being his solo goal away at Southampton. But Wolves just need more backup up front, especially given the fact that they loaned out Fabio Silva. Now, from Wolves' point of view, they'll hope that Gonzalo Guedes will be that guy to kind of maybe not replace Jimenez, but certainly take some of the burden off that pressure of being the main striker for Wolves. So maybe he can chip in a few goals for Wolves. I think he had a decent debut. I think he performed relatively well for Spurs. It's definitely a pass from him. And also a pass from the other new signing, Nunes from Sporting Lisbon. He looks like a really good, charismatic character off the pitch. And on the pitch, similar to Guedes, his debut wasn't too bad. So I think there's hope for Wolves. And then you look at that bench as well. So many standout names. It's arguably Wolves' strongest bench since their return to the Premier League, which was about a couple of seasons ago. So there's a lot to hope for Wolves, but they just lack that clinical edge up front. But from Spurs' point of view, look, the main thing is that they got the win. And the fact that Kane scored that goal was a big boost of confidence for him. And new signing Perisic looked really, really good. I think it was his first start for Tottenham at home, playing at left wing back to get a clean sheet and assist. Really good boost of confidence from him and Tottenham Hotspur. Palace 3, Aston Villa 1 in a very entertaining game at Selhurst Park, but ultimately it was Palace who were definitely the better team in this encounter, although Aston Villa took the lead in the first 5 minutes of the match. Leon Bailey cushioning a really good header to Ollie Watkins, and a very, very well taken goal from Ollie Watkins, who started the season relatively well for Aston Villa. So it was a good start from Villa, but Palace's reaction was really impressive from going behind. Zaha goes through on goal, a very good finish from him. And then from there, Palace continued to assert their dominance. They eventually got the penalty to make it 2-1. I do think it was a handball from Digne, just because his arm is above his shoulder height. So I do think it was a penalty. And then Zaha eventually converted the rebound. And then within a minute of coming on, Mateta gets the goal to make it 3-1. And you're looking at the stats, Aston Villa created an XG of 2.93, and Aston Villa only created an XG of 0.98. So really, Palace, having that XG of almost 3, were the better team, and I think the eye test has kind of proved that. Palace created more chances, they were playing the better football. Eberechi Eze and Zaha, particularly the standouts for Palace. So a really good start to the season for Palace. I know they lost on the opening night of the Premier League against Arsenal, but they put in a good enough performance against Liverpool to get a draw, and then a very convincing performance at home against Aston Villa. But for Aston Villa, Gerrard, they're already under a lot of pressure, and Gerrard's got to kind of figure out his best team, especially going forward. Aston Villa have so many options, the likes of Coutinho, Buendia, Bailey, Watkins, Ings, and now potentially Ismail Sarr. Gerrard needs to kind of figure out his best team. But for me, I think their issues are particularly midfield. Don't get me wrong, I think McGinn and Ramsey are both really promising footballers. McGinn's, since he's been playing in the Premier League, has been a consistent performer. just Villa look a little bit light and weak in midfield, particularly defensive midfield. So Gerrard has a lot of issues at Aston Villa, and he needs to get reaction from his team because they ended last season relatively poorly. So Gerrard's got a lot of work to do at Aston Villa. Then we have Fulham 3, Brentford 2, a very entertaining match in the West London derby, but it was Fulham that came out on top in the end. And like Aston Villa, Fulham started off the game really well, scoring within the first minute. Mitrovic on the left-hand side, whipping a ball into the box, and then Decordova-Reid eventually manages to get to the ball and then poked it home to make it 1-0. And then Paulinho, I think, he headed from a corner to make it 2-0, but then Brentford replied with their own goal from a corner to make it 2-1 from Norgard. And I think, both corners were defended relatively poorly, but for Brentford's goal, the goal they scored, I think that was more of a set-piece routine because Christian Norgard was completely on his own, and it was a really good finish from him to make it 2-1. Then in the second half, Ivan Toney, he's in my fantasy team, so unlucky for his goal to be ruled out for offside. I mean, it was literally inches. It was offside, but just so close. But then Ivan Toney, he managed to get his goal at Fulham, taunting the Fulham fans and Mitrovic by doing Mitrovic's celebration. But it was Fulham who had the last laugh in the end. Mitrovic scoring in the 90th minute to win it for Fulham. And Fulham are unbeaten. They've had a really good start to their Premier League campaign, getting a credible draw at home against Liverpool, then keeping a clean sheet away from home against Wolves. And look, yes, Fulham were second best against Wolves and arguably deserved to lose, but they still kept a clean sheet away from home against Wolves. And I think Fulham this season just want to stay up. They'll absolutely take probably 38 points and 17th spot. So the fact they got a point and a clean sheet away from home is really positive for them. And then to nick the extra 2 points against Brentford is a massive, massive boost for Fulham. I was interested by the lineup for Fulham because Rodak had a really good start to the season, but then of course Fulham had brought in Leno for a lot of money. So I was kind of wondering whether Fulham would start Leno or keep Rodak because Rodak's in good form. But in the end, Leno came in for a start, and I mean, he will probably be the number one now, but I do feel sorry for Rodak. But then also you have Stansfield playing for Fulham in the midfield, the 19-year-old. That's really promising from Fulham's point of view. But yeah, I think Fulham edged it in the end and deserved the win, but a really entertaining game. So for Brentford, I mean, far cry from their previous game where they beat Man United 4-0, but by no means did they perform really badly. It's just Fulham actually made some really good substitutions, bringing on Tom Cairney and Mbabu, and then also Mitrovic just scoring a really good header to win it. So fair play to both teams. And I think both teams will be really competitive this season in the Premier League. Brentford, having that charismatic striker in Toney, and Mitrovic also that charismatic striker for Fulham. But just a really entertaining game at Craven Cottage. Then we have Leicester 1, Southampton 2, and kind of similar themes for both teams, with Leicester taking the lead at home, but then again letting points drop and their lead slip, while Saints, being behind, but then managing to come back, again scoring twice, but this time they got the winner. And, going into the game, looking at Leicester's team sheet, Fofana missing because he's got heavy links with a move away to Chelsea. But then Harvey Barnes and Perez were back in the team, Soyuncu's on the bench, and I was surprised Tielemans on the bench. But, it shows that Leicester are getting, players who were injured back fit and ready, although they still haven't signed any outfield players, which is just astonishing. And I do think that needs to change, especially if Fofana and Maddison leave before the end of the window. So in the first half, nothing really much happened. But then Southampton in the second half, they grew into the game actually and responded really well after going behind from Maddison's stunning free kick. And, looking at Southampton's team sheet, I think it was right that Mara, Adam Armstrong and also Joe Aribo all started because they all came off the bench against Leeds and all made a good impact. So I was pleased from their point of view that they all started against Leicester. And like I said, Saints reacted really well from going behind against Leicester. And Shea Adams came on and scored a brace in 30 minutes. The first one for Shea, a little bit scrappy, but the second goal was excellent. Great ball in from James Ward-Prowse, who's going to be so important for Saints. And then a really stunning finish from Shea Adams to make it 2-1. And in the end, you'd have to say just fair play Saints for the manner of which they reacted to going behind was really impressive. And you look at the XG, Leicester only created an XG of 0.31, while Southampton created an XG of 1.45. And I think that's more worrying from Leicester's point of view rather than Saints' brilliance because, Leicester, even though they haven't signed any outfield players, they still have the likes of Barnes, Perez, Maddison and Vardy and Tielemans on the bench. That's enough to create lots of chances against a Saints team that are relatively poorish defensively. So very disappointing from Leicester's point of view. And for Southampton, massive win. And again, a really encouraging performance off the back of last week where they reacted so well to going 2 goals down. For them to again do the same thing shows actually Saints have got a real spirit about their team and have got a fight. And, if they are going to be in a relegation battle this season, they won't go down with a whimper, that's for sure. Then we have Everton snatching a point against Nottingham Forest at Goodison Park, and really kind of scrappy game for the main, really. Everton playing a 3-4-3 with, Davis and Iwobi in midfield, which isn't the strongest, especially defensively, while Forest stuck with their 3-4-1-2. And I think Forest edged it in play, but really, I think actually this game was about the battle of the 2 England goalkeepers, because Pickford is the undisputed England number 1, but Dean Henderson is deliberately gone to Forest to make sure he gets consistent game time. And so far, I'd say overall Dean Henderson's come out on top so far in this season, although it's still relatively early on. And then going into, injury time in this game, not injury time, towards the latter stages of the game, Pickford, he has a shot parried. Could he have done more with the shot? I think he could. It just parries straight to Brennan Johnson. A great finish from him. His first goal in the Premier League, and that's a massive boost for him and his confidence and for Nottingham Forest. But then Pickford, to be fair, he does what he does best. A very good long ball, excellent pass from him to Demarai Gray. A very good touch from Demarai Gray to take it down and slot it past Dean Henderson to make it 1-1. In the end, though, some would argue this is an early, relegation 6-pointer, maybe similar to Fulham Brentford. And in the end, you'd have to say Forest will be more disappointed. Don't get me wrong, Everton are an established Premier League side, but one that is struggling at this moment, especially with no Richarlison, who's gone, and Dominic Calvert-Lewin, who's out injured. I think Forest will be a little bit disappointed they couldn't just hang on for 3 points, but they've got a lot to look forward to. The fact that Morgie Gibbs-White is just signed, and when he came on looked really promising. They've still got Kouyaté and Dennis and Freuler on the bench, so Forest have got a lot to look forward to this season. But given that they've spent so much, they have to stay up. But for Everton, I think they look more balanced defensively, actually, with Tarkowski at left centre-back, Connor Cody as the central centre-back, and Mason Holgate as the right centre-back. That's not too bad. And Patterson and Mikalenko are, young prospects at full-back. So it's not all doom and gloom for Everton, but, despite Rondon starting, who's a proper striker, I think Everton definitely need to bring in another number 9. Then we have Bournemouth 0, Arsenal 3 in the late game on Saturday night, and really Arsenal just cruised to victory, which isn't much of a surprise. What is a surprise, though, is the fact that Martin Odegaard scored a brace, and within 15 minutes, I think that's only the second time in Martin's career that he's managed to score a brace, and the fact he did it so quickly was astonishing. But like I said, a really comfortable win for Arsenal. It finished 3-0, but it could have been more. But from Bournemouth's point of view, even though this sort of game won't define them in the Premier League, it's when they play Aston Villa at home, which they did win earlier in the season, to be fair. The manner of which they performed in the first half was really disappointing, and it doesn't look good for Bournemouth. But I do feel sorry to an extent for Scott Parker, because he hasn't really been backed in this window, and I think Bournemouth are going to need to make a lot more signings if they want to try and compete and stay up in the Premier League. Then on Sunday's games, we have Leeds United 3, Chelsea 0 in what was a thoroughly entertaining game. Right from the first whistle, both teams were at it. It was a very end-to-end game. But I think that definitely suited Leeds more, given that Leeds are more suited to the pressing football. And that's what Jesse Marsch really wants to see from his Leeds team. And I think it was just more coordinated, the press from Leeds' point of view, rather than Chelsea. Chelsea, with their passing, just lacked concentration and focus, and often their passes went astray, whereas Leeds, it just seemed like their game plan was really well executed, and all of the Leeds players knew exactly what to do and when. And that was epitomised none more so than Arison's amazing pressing, where he managed to close down Mendy, cleverly took it, nicked it off him and then scored. I think it's going to be a really important signing for Leeds United, and I think it's a really smart signing because Jesse Marsch knows players like Arison and I think Christiansen, both from RB Salzburg. That kind of Red Bull model. Jesse Marsch is really familiar with those players, so it was smart signings, and Arison does look really comfortable in this system, and I think that's the key thing with football. If managers have their distinct style of football and they bring in players that suit that, then they can thrive. And I think that's none more epitomised than Arison and his brilliant pressing. So Leeds went 2-0 up very quickly, and at half time I was expecting a big reaction from Chelsea, but that didn't come. If anything, Leeds just improved and they made it 3-0 eventually. And it could have been 4 after Koulibaly stupidly got a second yellow, but in the end Leeds really did batter Chelsea, and it was a very convincing win from their point of view. And to react after their such disappointing result last week, where they dropped 2 points really away from home, to be at home under that amazing atmosphere at Ellen Road and convincingly beat Chelsea was really significant. But from Chelsea's point of view, I think they were just caught in like rabbit headlights almost. Their just passing was off. They couldn't really create any proper chances. I mean, you look at the XG. Leeds had an XG of 2.17, while Chelsea's was 0.73. So Chelsea weren't at the races today. Leeds thoroughly deserved the win. Chelsea just need to react from this and really perform in the next game. But all credit really to Leeds. Jesse Marsch executed his game plan perfectly. Having Leeds win earlier so convincingly against Chelsea, and then Newcastle and Man City play out a phenomenal game. Man City took the lead early on, and I think everyone thought, oh God, here we go, here come Man City. But I was so impressed with Newcastle and the way they reacted to going behind. Alan St-Maximin just causing Man City defenders all sorts of problems. His cross into Almiron was excellent, and it was a really smart finish from Almiron. An awkward height, yes, and for him to go down and, chest it in, really impressive from Almiron and Newcastle, and that just boosted Newcastle even more. And Callum Wilson, a great finish from him, proper Premier League striker for Newcastle to make it 2-1. Then Trippier, stunning free kick to make it 3-1. But fair play to Man City, they got control of the game and they reacted to going 3-1 behind by making it 3-3 eventually. And in the end, I think a point was deserved from both teams. Yes, Man City created more chances and had more possession and had more shots, but Man City do that in most games anyway, and Newcastle created some really good chances, and for me, definitely deserved a point. But just a really amazing classic Premier League match, fantastic from both teams. And then finally we have West Ham 0, Brighton 2. Just a really poor start of the season from West Ham's point of view. Their new signing, Kehrer at centre-back, conceding a penalty. Even though it was on the line, if it's on the line, it is a penalty. I do think it was just a penalty, but, not good for Kehler's point of view. And eventually McAllister tucks home away the penalty to make it 1-0. And in classic Brighton style, they create a good amount of chances, and their second goal was just really well worked. A brilliant bit of play from Brighton, a great finish from Trossard, and in the end, you'd have to say Brighton did deserve the win. They were the better team. Although, even though West Ham didn't score, and even though West Ham haven't scored in the Premier League yet, and some of their fans might be worried, I still think some of their signings have been really good. Scamacca looks like a good signing. I think Kehrer will come good, even though he had a really bad debut. I think Maxwell Cornet is a solid signing from Burnley, good fee. And it's not like they haven't created chances in their first 3 games. Against Forest, they were the better team and arguably should have won. And against Brighton on Sunday, they had good amount of chances, especially from set pieces. I think they had a header tipped onto the post by Sanchez. Cresswell had a shot block, so it shouldn't be all doom and gloom for West Ham. I think things will start to click from them. It's just been a relatively unlucky start for West Ham. But if I was a Hammers fan, I wouldn't be too concerned. But from Brighton's point of view, fantastic start to the season. Their big question going into this season was, can they convert the so many chances they create? And eventually, yes, beating Man United 2-1, somehow not beating Newcastle at home, and then relatively convincingly beat West Ham 2-0 away from home. So fantastic start from Brighton's point of view. But for West Ham, I wouldn't panic too much if I was a West Ham fan, like I said, because they are creating chances and because their new signings do look relatively promising. So that's the Premier League weekend roundup. I haven't talked about Man United Liverpool because that's on the Monday night. I don't think it will be as bad of a game from United's point of view as people might think, because normally when teams get battered in the previous game, they have a good reaction and they react in a kind of defensive manner. So I actually wouldn't be surprised if Liverpool don't score or if Liverpool only narrowly win. But yeah, it's still going to be a difficult game from Man United's point of view. I'm fascinated to see how Erik ten Hag approaches the game, whether he sticks to his kind of passing out from the back game plan or whether he tries to just park the bus and keep a clean sheet against this brilliant Liverpool team. But Let me know what you thought of the Premier League and this game week in the comments below. I mean, it was so entertaining, wasn't it? So many goals, so much drama. It was a really, really good set of fixtures and results. So let me know what you thought in the comments below, and please like, comment and subscribe, and I hope to see you all in the next video. Thank you very much.